Every musician has a moment or several moments that really define who they are, both as a musician and as a professional. And I can think of one crystal clear moment that really influenced who I was as a musician and was the most valuable lesson to me, probably in my entire life, not just in music, but just in general. And that story happened, it was my junior year of college, and I was preparing to do juries, performance juries, where at the end of the semester you have to perform two pieces in front of your peers with your professors watching and grading you. So, long story short, I suffered a concussion a few days before my jury. And I had to go to the emergency room and I got a doctor's note and I went and showed it to my professor. I'm like, hey, I had this go on, man. I wanted to let you know. And he says, well, I'm sorry to hear about that. I hope you feel better. And I said, yeah, so just when can I reschedule my jury because I have a concussion? And he looked at me with this almost blank expressionless look and he says, what do you mean? And I said, well, I have a concussion. I can't do this jury. And he says, you are going to do your jury at the same time as everyone else does. And he gave me a spiel about like if I was serious about music, I would find a way to do it. So I was like, oh, and I was kind of taken aback, but I was also like, okay, this is a cool little challenge here. I want to see if I can do this, and kind of maybe I lost some short-term memory, but maybe I can retrain my brain here. Maybe I can pull some rabbit out of my hat. And if I do it, awesome. And if I don't do it, well, I have a legitimate excuse. It's like, oh, I screwed up my jury, but hey, I had a concussion. What do you expect? And so I kept that in mind and I prepared really hard for those few days with my, at the end of the semester of music school with my head swirling and all that. And come the Monday morning of the juries, I performed the first piece. And because I had this piece for so long and it was kind of in my long-term memory, I performed it pretty well. But then there was another piece which I had to perform, which I had only had for about a week or two. And because I had lost some short-term memory, most of it was gone. So I went up there and tried to perform it, and I had to stop once and then restart and stop and start and stop, and it was a train wreck. And after I restarted, my professor just says, all right, okay, I'm just going to shut this down. And he said something to the effect of like I was embarrassing myself and I was embarrassing the studio and the school, and for me to just sit down. And there were some other words probably exchanged. I don't remember, or maybe I remember this in a different way, but it was like a moment that you can feel all the blood rush out of your face and your heart starts beating and you get that cold sweat. And it was humiliating for me and embarrassing. And I went and sat down and I started crying, like literally started crying in front of all my peers, in front of the music school, in front of all the teachers. And he kicked me out, kicked me out of the room. He says, all right, we're trying to get some work done here. You need to go outside and collect yourself. And really it ended up like I'm not sure if it was in that moment he said it in front of everybody else, but I know he says, you're no longer a music major. You've been pulling this bullshit for too long. I'm not going to let you ruin your life. Kind of that. And it was just like, I was traumatized by that. And for like the next several weeks, I was just grieving that crazy experience and how bad I messed up. And yeah, it was tough. It was really tough. And most people, when they hear this story, they think about, there's not a lot of context around the story. And so some back context was I had been struggling in some music school and I'd been like finding some excuses not, I got mono my freshman year. I just had some unfortunate circumstances that kind of set me back, but I was also letting those kind of unfortunate circumstances be an excuse for me not to pull through. And I guess the point my professor was trying to make And this is where the why in the road is, because most people think that my advisor was some kind of sociopath, some kind of asshole, that it would never fly today. And maybe that's true. But why this was so valuable to me and what he was trying to teach me was that being a musician is very much like being an athlete. And the higher up you get in your career, the less room for error there is. And, you could be having a bad day. Maybe one of your parents just died. Maybe you're feeling a little bit sick. You're having a bad breakup. If you go out in front of the stage, in front of 40, 50,000 people, they don't care about that. Not saying that people are bad or anything like that, but they are paying to be entertained. So if you're an athlete, if you're a musician, and you're performing on a high level, the rest of the world doesn't care. They just want to see your results. And he was making the point, what if I start playing with an artist, okay, a really famous artist, and I'm going out, on an arena gig, and, some unfortunate thing happens that kind of causes me to be, shakes my mental game, or maybe I'm physically feeling a little bit sick. Those are all legit excuses, but, real professionals find a way to perform better under the spotlight. And he was telling me that amateurs under the spotlight, they cave, they crack. And music is very unforgiving. And when you're on a gig, you can either do it or you can't. There is no in between. And that was a very tough lesson for me to learn. But it also really drove home the fact that, okay, if you want to do this, you're either going to do it or you don't. And you have to find a way to make it through. So anytime there's something going wrong on a gig, like the monitors go out, the artist calls a song I never heard before, there's a sudden, we need to switch your playing time, or we need to give you these really suboptimal conditions. I really think back to that one experience and put it into my head that, okay, yeah, these things, they may be uncomfortable, they may be working against me, but no one out there cares, including the people I'm in the band with. Now, of course, they may care and they may understand, but really, if I totally shit the bed, they're going to remember that. Even if there's a valid excuse. So if, you want to get something done in this life, especially as a musician, the higher up you get, the more you have to find a way to get it done. And, some people disagree with this, which is fine. And by no means am I an unforgiving person. I'm very empathetic, and when someone's struggling with something on a gig, it's my job to try and help them and help them get through the gig. But I set a standard for myself that, if there is, let's say the artist sends me 30 songs the night before. Well, I'm going to show up knowing those 30 songs. I don't care if I have to stay up all night long, because you can have excuses or you can have results. You really can't have both of those. And that's very much the way music is. Now, if you want to play I think my advisor was telling me, if you just want to play in community theaters or be part of groups, yeah, people give you this leeway and they understand. And it was kind of just telling me, if you want to play in the minor leagues, you can do this bullshit. But once you get to the big leagues, there's less room for error. And the big boys or the big players find a way to make things happen. So for me, that was instrumental in my developing an approach to being a professional musician. If there's some kind of obstacle in my way, I start thinking about, how am I going to get around this? Not, okay, well, maybe I'll try to get around this, and if I can't, well, or, this is stuck in my way. It's no, I have to get to my goal, and I have to perform. And that has really served me well. It's got me in a really good headspace where if I'm on a gig and something's going wrong, I can't focus on any excuses or any sob stories. I have to focus on, how am I going to make this work? And yeah, that's probably the most defining, influential experience of my career as a musician. It's informed everything I've done ever since. And anytime like I feel like I'm failing or I feel like I'm not performing to my standards and I start thinking, oh, I have these excuses, I immediately remember that and I say, okay, at the end of the day, if I want to do this, there aren't a lot of excuses. It's like I need to get results done. So what can I do to get myself forward instead of feeling bad for myself? So if you like these stories, if you think they're valuable, if you think they're interesting, entertaining, please like, follow, subscribe. I tend to put out one of these talking videos once a week, and I usually put out performances once every other day. But again, thanks for following, thanks for listening, and I hope all of you out there find ways to make the gigs happen.